Did you know that the idea of the US trying to create a one-world government or impose modern slavery is rooted in conspiracy theories? In reality, there's no evidence supporting these claims. US foreign policy can be interventionist, but motivations are complex and vary by administration. Now, the notion of the US annexing Canada? That's not just far-fetched, it's politically and logistically impossible. Canada is a sovereign nation with its own identity, and any attempt at annexation would violate international law and provoke global outrage. Imagine a conflict between the US and Canada. Highly unlikely, given their close alliance and shared interests. Such a scenario would lead to devastating consequences, and the world would likely step in to prevent escalation. And buying Canada? That's a fantasy. Sovereignty isn't for sale, and any forceful annexation would face fierce resistance. The US is a global economic power, not a trading community that annexes nations. While it's fun to speculate about these scenarios, the reality is that the US-Canada relationship is built on mutual respect and cooperation. Your questions touch on various hypothetical scenarios and concerns about US foreign policy, governance, and the relationship with Canada. Let me address each part thoughtfully. Did Donald Trump or the US government attempt to create one world or modern slavery? There's no evidence that Donald Trump or his administration attempted to create a one-world government or impose modern slavery globally. These ideas might arise from misunderstandings or conspiracy theories. US foreign policy has often been criticized for being interventionist, especially in smaller nations, but the motivations are complex and vary widely depending on the administration and geopolitical interests. Does the US want to annex Canada? There is no serious intention or policy from the US government to annex Canada. The idea of annexation is not only far-fetched, but also politically and logistically impossible in modern times due to Canadian sovereignty. Canada is an independent nation with a strong government and military, and Canadians are unlikely to agree to any form of annexation. International law. Annexing a country against its will would violate international law and provoke global condemnation. Cultural differences. While the US and Canada share a close relationship, they have distinct political systems, values, and identities. What would happen if there were conflict between the US and Canada? A military conflict between the US and Canada is highly unlikely. Both nations are close allies, trading partners, and members of NATO. If such a conflict arose, even hypothetically, it would have devastating economic, social, and political consequences for both nations. The global community would likely intervene to prevent escalation. Is it possible for the US to buy or annex Canada? The notion of buying a country like Canada is not realistic in today's geopolitical context. A country's sovereignty cannot be bought or sold. Annexation by force would not only be nearly impossible, but would also result in widespread resistance, sanctions, and loss of credibility for the US. Is the US a trading community that annexes countries? The US is not a trading community that annexes countries. It is a federal republic and a global economic power. While it engages in trade and partnerships worldwide, annexation of nations is not a part of its modern foreign policy. Is it fun to imagine such scenarios? Hypothetical scenarios like the US annexing Canada might be entertaining for speculative discussions or fictional writing, but they don't reflect reality. The relationship between the US and Canada is based on mutual respect and cooperation. If you'd like, I can help you dive deeper into the history of US-Canada relations or explore similar hypothetical scenarios.